Hello all, I am Setu Chitra, a native Malayali from Kerala, and today I am going to tell you about this untold story which was marked as a significant victory of an Indian king which changed history plots so as to become the first Asian ruler to defeat a major European power. So coming to the story, as most of you know, today's Kerala was a major hotspot for traders and travelers in the ancient world map. Then there was no Bombay, Chennai and no Calcutta, but many who came to India was to the land called the Muziris, today's Kerala, called the heaven of spices. So you had people from as far as Middle East, Greece and China coming all the way to this land of spices, and many settled here over the past 2000 years, and this led to a process of cultural acculturation and assimilation of these communities into the local Malabar culture. By the 16th century, realizing the huge profit and considering Kerala as a gateway to the wealth and spice trade hub of India, gradually several European superpowers started desiring to capture and establish their power over Kerala. But the Dutch, who were among the first European power to wage war against Travancore, today's Kerala, was decisively defeated by Marthanda Verma of Travancore in the Battle of Colachel, making it the first Asian victory against a European power, and challenged that he would invade Europe someday. It changed the course of world history. Yet, how many of us know about this crucial battle? So today let me narrate to you this untold story that many of you don't know. So let's get started. Surrounded by the waters of the Arabian Sea on one side and the Western Ghats on the other, Kerala had been the trade capital of India and attracted people from all over the world since ancient times. The culture and heritage of this small piece of land in South India has a story that starts a long time back from now. The Babylonians and Assyrians traded here centuries before Christ. The edicts of Emperor Ashoka talk about the land of the Keralputras as an independent land beyond his empire's frontiers in South India. The region has also endorsed different religions, occupations and cultures in the course of its 2000-year history, giving refuge and new economical opportunities as traders. Let it be the Malabar Jews, Syrians, Armenians and other Middle Eastern groups, and many settled here, and this led to a process of cultural acculturation and assimilation of these communities into the local Malabar culture. The major attraction were the spices, some of which were only found in the entire world only in the native South Indian hills of Kerala. Especially pepper crowned the king of spices, which was the most widely traded spice in the world. Since ancient times, pepper was exported from Muziris in Kerala to Rome and Egypt. Interestingly, pepper was even found in the nostrils of Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II, mummified in 1213 BC, indicating that the spice had been traded for over 3 millennia. Since Romans conquered much of the Middle East, North Africa and Europe, the craze for pepper spiraled and fueled more trade with India. Each year, the Roman Empire dispatched a fleet of 120 ships to Kerala to bring back this treasure. Valued as black gold, as then pepper was more expensive than gold. It's intriguing that even an old temple of Augustus once stood in Kodungalur, in today's Kerala, proof of well-entrenched trade ties, while Roman ports like Ostia had, Horia, exclusive pepper warehouse. Intellectuals of the time bemoaned how Rome bled because of pepper trade. After the fall of Rome, Arab traders took over while the Italians maintained hegemony over the Mediterranean. The lucrative pepper trade spawned the rise of city-states like Genoa and Venice. To bypass Arab middlemen, the Portuguese sought a direct trade route to India. In 1498, Vasco da Gama sailed around the Cape of Good Hope and landed on Kerala's legendary Spice Coast. Gradually by the 16th century, major European superpowers such as the Dutch, French, Danish, Portuguese and the British reached this trading gateway of India, the Malabar. Although they initially were seen to be likely traders as the traders that the land of Kerala had seen for centuries, but these European powers had different desires. Just like the story of the duck that laid golden eggs, the Europeans were not satisfied with only trade profits but wanted to conquer this peaceful trading hub with its naval and army power. In the early 18th century, the Malabar Coast region of present-day Kerala was divided among several smaller kingdoms. In the 1730s, Martanda Verma, the ruler of Travancore, adopted an expansionist policy and conquered several territories from these small states. The Dutch, who had conquered most of Indonesia and Far East Asia, had already started making temporary stations in the Malabar Coast. This threatened the interests of the Dutch East India Company's command at Malabar, whose spice trade depended on procurement of spices from these states. Martanda Verma and his vassals refused to honor the monopoly contracts that the Dutch had with the states annexed by Travancore, adversely affecting the Dutch trade in Malabar. In 1739, Gustaf Willam van Imhof, the Dutch governor of Ceylon, today's Sri Lanka, visited Kochi. Later that year, the Dutch organized an alliance with the rulers of Kochi, Takeover, Vadakkamkur, Purkakad, Kollam, and Kayankulam. Van Imhof personally met Martanda Verma to negotiate peace, threatening to wage war against Travancore and destroy the state if the Dutch terms were not accepted. But Martanda Verma dismissed the threat and replied that he had been thinking about invading Europe someday. In late 1739, the Dutch command at Malabar declared sudden war on Travancore, without obtaining permission or waiting for reinforcements from Batavia. The Dutch deployed a detachment of soldiers from Ceylon against Travancore, under the command of Captain Johannes Hackert. They and their allies achieved several military successes in the initial campaign. In November, the Allied army forced the Travancore army stationed near Kollam to retreat, and advanced up to Tangassery. The British East India Company chief at Anchutengu congratulated the Dutch on their victory, and requested them to leave their establishment at Edva in peace. By early December, the Dutch and their allies marched towards Attingal and Workala. When the Travancore army withdrew to check an invasion by Chanda Sahib of Erkot in the south, the allies achieved further military successes. However, the Dutch decided to wait for reinforcements from Ceylon before waging further war against Travancore. In November 1740, the Dutch command in Malabar asked for reinforcements from Ceylon, and launched a second campaign against Travancore. Now, the Travancore force turned against the Dutch possessions, captured Dutch outposts in Travancore, attacked the factories, and took possession of the goods stored. While matters were thus in the north, small reinforcement force of 105 and 70, which the Dutch governor called from Ceylon, effected a landing at Colachel. Now coming to the Dutch occupation of Colachel, the Dutch sent 2 large ships and 3 sloops to Colachel, bombarding the coast. The Dutch soldiers fortified a place near the port with wooden posts and garrisoned a portion of the Dutch force in it. The rest proceeded and attacked the Travancore outposts on the coast, such as Tengapattinam, Midalam, Kalliapattinam, and advanced to Eraniel. On 29 November, the Dutch commander Van Golinus announced a complete blockade of the Travancore coast around Colachel, directing his forces to seize all ships bound for the coast, with the exception of the English ships carrying goods to Edva. On 13 January 1741, the Dutch ship Marsevein was sent southwards, to be anchored between Tengapattinam and Colachel. On 10 February, another Dutch expedition comprising 7 large ships and several smaller vessels landed just north of Colachel. to effectively control the newly conquered territories. The Dutch were expecting reinforcements to arrive from Ceylon and Batavia, but the company government at Batavia could not spare any reserve forces because of the Java War. Faced with an acute shortage of Dutch soldiers in Malabar, Van Golines requested at least 300 to 400 men from the Dutch Ceylon, and meanwhile, sent a section of the Dutch army to Kanyakumari to attack Travancore. When Marthanda Verma reached Kalkulam, he adopted measures to arrest the progress of the Dutch who being, at the time, in possession of almost all the villages between Colachel and Kottha, and are intended to attack Padmanapuram, the capital of Travancore. The Raja raised a levy of 2,000 nas, reinforced the regular infantry already in service in that part of the country. Marthanda Verma strongly remonstrated with the Dutch governor of Cochin and wrote to the government in Batavia a letter of remonstrance and complaint. King Marthanda Verma asked for help from the local Mukuvar leaders to aid them in the war. They agreed on the king's demand, and many sea divers in Mukuvars were used to sink the few Dutch ships which were anchored in Colachel at night. After the victory of the Colachel War, a local fishing village was named Merthandam Thura. Delano's research text from the University of Leiden in Netherlands had references about the Mukuvar in Colachel. First, he made it clear that however much the Dutch tried, the Mukuvars did not betray the Travancore king. As the Dutch approached the shore, the Travancore army had made a retreat, and the locals fled the area. It was not enough for the Dutch to bombard a place and then barge in. To continue the war they required fortifications, trenches, and makeshift sheds and storerooms. The Dutch captain wanted his generals to talk to the Mukuvar community in the most peaceful manner, and get them to their side. They wanted the Mukuvars for the work on the fortifications, and also for local support. Pots of money was offered. The fishermen refused. The Dutch then approached the local Jesuit priests to get the fishermen on board. Delano writes that the Jesuits told the Dutch point blank that the fishermen would not betray their king. In retaliation, the Jesuit church in Colachel was bombarded by the Dutch. A priest was killed, and 3 were abducted and taken to a Dutch ship to be tortured. The second reference reveals how members of the Mukuvar community delayed Dutch reinforcements from reaching Colachel. A small mail boat with an officer and a few Mukuvar men was sent to the Kanyakumari Dutch camp to fetch reinforcements. Delano writes that the fisherman toppled the boat and took the officer to the Travancore camp. The fishermen were also instrumental in tricking many unsuspecting Dutch soldiers who were shipped in as reinforcements to march straight into the mouth of the Travancore army. It was some of these trapped Dutch soldiers who gave the Travancore army tips about Dutch strategy. On 5 August, a cannonball fired by the Travancore army fell into a barrel of gunpowder inside the Dutch garrison, and the resulting fire destroyed the entire rice supply of the stockade. Consequently, the Dutch were forced to surrender on 7 August. The Dutch soldiers at Colachel surrendered on the condition that they would be allowed to go to Kanyakumari with their weapons. However, Marthanda Verma did not honor the agreement, and imprisoned them as soon as they came out of the fort. The Travancore forces captured a large number of muskets and some cannons from the Dutch garrison at Colachel. They imprisoned 24 Europeans, who were imprisoned at the Odagiri fort in Puliyukurichi. Later, Marthanda Verma, after strategic and smart planning, gave them their weapons back, and asked them to join the Travancore army. Several European prisoners, including Eustachius Delano and Duiven Scott, accepted the offer and served Marthanda Verma. 28 high-level Dutch officers, including Admiral Delano, were captured. The defeat of the Dutch in Colachel was the turning point of the Travancore-Dutch War. The Dutch threat to Travancore was not eliminated after Marthanda Verma's success at Colachel. as is evident by the fact that the Dutch continued to wage war against Travancore in the northern Malabar. They also maintained their position at Kanyakumari, hoping to receive reinforcements from Ceylon. However, a 5,000 strong army dispatched by Marthanda Verma prevented them from advancing towards the capital of Travancore. They also sent 150 soldiers to reinforce their advance posts at Paravur and Airur. The Dutch gave up their position at Kanyakumari only in October. They also abandoned Attingal, after the soldiers of their ally Deshamganad abandoned them. Travancore's victory at Colachel greatly had decreased the Dutch morale, and in a 26 October report to Batavia, the Dutch command at Kochi mentioned that the native chiefs now believed that the Dutch East India Company could be driven off the Malabar coast. In addition to the destruction of the Dutch East India Company's designs in the Malabar coast, the capture of the leaders of the expedition, Eustachius de Lanno and his second-in-command Donati, was very beneficial to the kingdom of Travancore. When de Lanno and Donati were paroled, they took up service with Travancore and modernized the Travancore army, which, till then, had been armed mainly with melee weapons, into an effective fighting force. De Lanno was initially entrusted with the training of a few companies of the Maharaja's bodyguards, and he did this with such an excellence that he was entrusted with modernizing the entire Travancore army. 14. De Lanno modernized the existing firearms and introduced better artillery and, more importantly, trained the Travancore army in the European style of military drill and military tactics. He carried out his orders with such sincerity and devotion that he rapidly rose through the ranks, eventually becoming the Valia Capitan, Commander-in-Chief, of the Travancore military, and was given the Udagiri fort, locally known as the Dillanai Kota, de Lanno's fort, near Padmanapuram, to reside. He was one of the commanders of the Travancore army during the decisive Battle of Ambalpujha, where his erstwhile employers were fighting on behalf of Cochin and her allies. Following Travancore's victory over Cochin and her allies, the Dutch signed a peace treaty with Travancore and later sold their forts, which were incorporated by de Lanno into the northern lines, the Nedunkota, that guarded the northern border of Travancore. The Travancore military that de Lanno was instrumental in modernizing went on to conquer more than half of the modern state of Kerala, and the Nedunkota forts de Lanno had designed held up the advance of Tipu Sultan's French-trained army during the Third Anglo-Mysore War in 1791 AD till the British East India Company joined the war in support of Travancore. Donati ended up as an officer in the Travancore army, and it seems that the rest of the Dutch prisoners took up service with the Maharaja's forces, and their descendants were present up to 1878 in Travancore. Another direct outcome of the event at Colachel was the takeover of the black pepper trade by the state of Travancore. Under Marthanda Verma made a deliberate attempt to consolidate its power by the use of Indian Ocean trade. It was the policy of Marthanda Verma to offer assistance to native Nasrani Syrian Christian traders in order to limit European involvement in ocean trade. This development was to have serious repercussions on the Dutch and the trading world of Kerala at large. In 1753 the Dutch signed the Treaty of Mavelikara, agreeing not to obstruct the Raja's expansion, and in turn, to sell to him arms and ammunition. This marked the end of Dutch power in India, which could have changed the present history. All thanks to the bravery and valor of the people of Kerala and their king Marthanda Verma, who then became the first Asian ruler to defeat a major European power. Thank you for being patient listeners. This is signing off. Setu Chitra. For more such informative, untold stories, subscribe our channel. For you it's just a click of the button, and no loss. but for us it is an encouragement to keep telling you untold stories. Thank you.